Hey there, amazing friends! I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great content. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. When empires crumbled at midnight, ominous omens and terrifying secrets buried by ancient civilizations. Night envelops the silent desert with a cloak of stars, and jagged ruins pierce the horizon where once a mighty capital stood. The winds carries a hush, almost a lament, as though the land itself remembers the terror that preceded the city's collapse. Across millennia, humanity has built great empires, some vaster than the imagination can grasp, boasting roads that stretched across continents, armies that subjugated entire peoples, and cultures that redefined architecture or science. Yet, so often, these empires fell in a swift, harrowing moment, leaving behind scattered remnants for archaeologists or travelers to unearth centuries later. Beneath the grandeur of toppled palaces and broken statues, older and darker truths lurk, terrifying secrets that the ancients may have concealed or that only flickered into view in the final hours of a doomed civilization. The stories that follow are an exploration of these unsettling echoes, eerie omens that foretold catastrophe, inscriptions describing curses too real to dismiss, and a persistent sense that something beyond mortal comprehension wove its tendrils through the corridors of fallen power. Perhaps these accounts will remain speculation, half lost in the dust of libraries. Or perhaps they will resonate, stirring recognition that the demise of empires can hinge on cosmic ironies, monstrous legends, or intangible forces that call out from the crypt of history. It's often the last acts of a civilization, played out under moonlight or in the hush of a black sky, that produce the most ominous stories. Take the fabled empire of Halatheon, whose marble temples and irrigation networks once spanned a continent. From recovered clay tablets and the half-deciphered Eclipse chronicles, modern researchers glean a picture of an advanced society undone almost overnight. The official record states they were invaded by barbarian hordes. Archaeology confirms that fortifications collapsed under external assault. Yet local legends hint that in the final weeks before the meltdown, a series of terrifying omens plagued the city. Residents reported that midnight brought an impossible hush. Dogs refused to bark, insects fell silent, and even the rivers that cut through farmland still as if someone pressed pause on the landscape. Some scrawlings in a hidden temple crypt describe the night of the crimson sky, during which the moon took on an unearthly red hue for hours longer than any natural lunar eclipse. The chronicles claim thousands thronged the central square, panic gripping them, while the royal priests performed frenzied rites to placate the ancient watchers. When day came, mass hysteria erupted, an impetus for the invading armies to strike unchallenged. The empire's abrupt demise was later rationalized by simpler historical accounts. But a few recovered inscriptions mention something about a monstrous shape glimpsed overhead at the height of the red moon, as though an ancient deity soared on phantom wings. Some historians dismiss this as a parable of doom, but in the vaulted hush of a museum's restricted archives, the notion persists that Halatheon's downfall was not purely man's doing. Elsewhere, the crumbling library of a once mighty southwestern kingdom reveals references to a black obelisk that supposedly held the city's soul. The empire in question, known to us through the name Carthessa, was said to harness potent spiritual energy via the obelisk, a towering monolith of unknown stone that glowed faintly in moonlight. In the city's final generation, Carthessa flourished, building labyrinthine canals and forging alliances through its vast wealth. Yet rumors circulated among foreign ambassadors about a looming curse tied to the obelisk. It demanded cyclical tributes, the essence of life from the Empire's best and brightest. The high priests kept the details secret. Then, on the eve of Carthes's downfall, multiple eyewitness accounts from captured foreigners mention a horrifying spectacle. They claim that at midnight, a mass convocation occurred around the obelisk, with priests chanting in archaic tongues. The stone's glow intensified, and screams echoed across the city. By dawn, the city's monarchy had vanished, leaving only a thick black residue pooled at the obelisk's base. Within days, Carthes's population dwindled, overcome by plague or fleeing in terror. The obelisk was found shattered. Those who approached too close claimed to hear faint whispering from the shards, urging them to resurrect the old rites. The official cause: an internal revolt and a catastrophic failure of water supply. But the subtext in the discovered papyri hints at something far more disturbing: a meltdown triggered by unholy power that the priests could no longer control. In some cases, these final nights included monstrous apparitions that defenders wrote off as allegories. For instance, the mountain fortress of Keeler, perched high in a frozen range, famously collapsed in a single avalanche, or so the official record says. However, a battered codex discovered in the 19th century describes a vision seen by a soldier on watch: an immense shadow shaped like a horned beast silhouetted against the moon, prowling the ramparts. The text said that the fortress' existence was tied to an ancient bargain, presumably with some primal being believed to dwell in the ice caves. Each year, a ritual offering was cast into a crevasse at midnight. The year the fortress fell, the offering was neglected due to a new, more rational-minded commander. That same week, an avalanche of unprecedented scale roared down, burying the fortress and everyone in it. The soldier's final entry in the codex was scrawled in haste, referencing a roar that shook the columns, followed by a burst of swirling snow that seemed alive. Searching historians remain divided. Was the avalanche a natural event triggered by weather conditions, or was it the monstrous revenge from an entity starved of tribute? The evidence is ambiguous, but the codex's mention of intangible roars, swirling shapes, and a horned silhouette persist as cautionary whispers about supernatural pacts undone. In the broad tapestry of lost civilizations, the city-state of Merak stands out for the bizarre phenomenon known as the Ravenous Night. Stone steles carved with cryptic symbols recount how, in the final months of Merak's dominion, an unearthly darkness descended for 3 consecutive nights, each new moon. Pitch blackness, so impenetrable that torches and lamps refused to cast light. People cowered indoors, hearing unidentifiable howls echo in the streets. The steles mention missing townsfolk discovered the next dawn with expressions of abject terror, though no wounds or visible trauma were found. Over time, the phenomenon escalated, culminating in a night when an entire district's population vanished. Merak's final steles depict frantic scribbles about the devourer that consumes souls in the gloom. 2 weeks later, a foreign expedition arrived to find the city silent, full of half-eaten meals, dried blood in some squares, and not a single survivor. The Ravenous Night was never documented again, but the expedition's log recounts an unsettling hush in Merak, as though the air itself had been consumed. Some scholars consider it a mass plague or social collapse, but the steles strongly hint that something intangible yet dreadful hunted the people whenever darkness fell. Even time's passage in that final night was said to distort, with watchers losing track of hours as though thrown into a suspended hush. The memory of Merak's end exists as one of the more frightening examples of an entire society undone by forces that remain unidentified, be they psychological mania or a literal devouring presence. It's not only curses and monstrous shadows that populate these stories. Some revolve around cosmic signs, celestial alignments, or unexplainable star patterns that preceded the Empire's final breath. The desert realm of Caraxes, revered for its advanced astronomy, left behind star charts etched onto obsidian tablets. These charts trace typical constellations, but near the Empire's last decade, the scribes recorded a new star they called Zeth. The star appeared abruptly near the horizon, shining a sickly green hue not recognized by any known ephemeris. The scribes linked Zeth's rising to an intensification of famine, plague, and civil unrest. In the final months, the rulers in the capital city held an emergency ritual, hoping to banish the star's malefic influence. Witness accounts on clay tiles say the ceremony was led by the Circle of Watchers, chanting day and night. But during the eclipse that ironically occurred, a beam of emerald light supposedly shone from the sky onto the city's central spire, causing that structure to crumble, unleashing an inferno across the palace grounds. The star vanished from the sky, and Caraxes' population scattered. In subsequent centuries, the phenomenon of Zeth has never reappeared or been explained by modern astronomy. Yet Caraxes' meltdown remains tethered to the weird cosmic sign that defied known patterns. Some scholars guess a rogue meteor. Others evoke legends of an alien intelligence or cosmic deity that singled out Caraxes for condemnation. The artifact record is meager, overshadowed by ephemeral references to the star that heralded ruin. The memory of such cosmic omens resonates with the silent dread one finds in scattered stone engravings from the jungles of the southern continent. One famed example is the labyrinth city of Malacca. Historians know that Malacca thrived in architecture and mathematics. Its step pyramids remain half buried under vines. Carvings on the pyramid walls depict a prophecy that a fiery serpent from the heavens would one day descend upon the city, marking the midnight hour. The city's priests prepared elaborate protective rites, but an abrupt shift in the glyphs near the final layers of carving suggests that the serpent arrived sooner than expected. Some interpret that as a meteor or a comet impacting nearby. The city presumably faced cataclysmic devastation. Another reading suggests a plague swept in or an unstoppable foreign army. The reason is unclear, but whatever the cause, Malacca fell. The final glyphs show a stylized serpent coiled around a temple, devouring worshippers. Archaeological remains do show burned strata in certain layers, but that could be from a conventional city fire. Regardless, the engraving's monstrous serpent has become symbolic of doom from the sky. The silent remains of Malacca now lie in a thick canopy, its secrets overgrown. Explorers sometimes claim they sense a deep hush there, akin to a place once haunted by cosmic horrors. Yet for every tale of monstrous omens, others revolve around quiet infiltration, malevolent artifacts, or arcane knowledge introduced by wandering mystics that unwittingly led an empire astray. In the dwarfed remains of a city known only as Tarquesh, glass tablets mention the arrival of an outsider sage who promised unstoppable power. This sage apparently taught the monarchy a ritual that harnessed energies from the underworld to fortify the city walls. The monarchy, seeking absolute dominion, embraced it. Then, at the Empire's Midnight Festival, the ground split, releasing a wave of apparitions described as ephemeral and wailing. The ensuing panic tore the city's unity apart, culminating in a mass exodus. The monarchy tried to revert the ritual, but the outsider sage had already vanished, leaving behind only cryptic runes scrawled on temple floors. Tarquesh dissolved in panic, its trade routes abandoned. Some suspect the entire story was an allegory about greed and betrayal, while others maintain that actual supernatural energies were unleashed. The truth remains locked in partial documents rescued by traveling merchants who wrote about a tangible darkness creeping from the edges of the city. All attempts to interpret the runes remain inconclusive. Are they warnings from a forgotten mystical tradition or the ravings of charlatans? The scenario underscores how illusions of hidden power can break an empire's back in a single night of misguided ceremony. Across these numerous cases, a pattern emerges. Each doomed empire encountered unexplainable phenomena, be they monstrous shapes, cosmic signs, or black magic forces as their final hours approached. Some might argue these are purely metaphorical accounts written by traumatized survivors, while others see glimpses of a genuine, intangible phenomenon that arises whenever civilizations overreach. The recurring references to midnight stand out, as if at the stroke of the darkest hour, a veil parted. One wonders if that's symbolic or literal. Did these events truly cluster around the midnight threshold, or is it simply that folklore dramatizes a nighttime motif for maximum effect? Possibly it's a bit of both, for midnight is the hour when fear runs highest, and the human psyche is prone to see or conjure horrors. That doesn't diminish the consistent narrative that something greater than political machinations can fell an empire in a wave of chaos. A question arises: why do these secrets remain half-buried, found only in obscure texts or temple carvings? Historically, many an empire's downfall was overshadowed by the new order that replaced them, which typically rewrote the official record, downplaying mystical or monstrous details. Meanwhile, relics that told a truer tale were stashed away, eroded by time, or actively destroyed by those who feared their revelations. In modern times, as we decode the fragments, we begin to see that past generations might have possessed knowledge or encountered forces we in the rational present easily dismiss. The scariest possibility is that such forces or events might manifest again if certain conditions align. Some fringe scholars suspect that another wave of midnight meltdown might come for our present era if certain cosmic or planetary factors repeat. That remains speculation, but these old histories carry a silent caution. Civilizations always think themselves eternal, only to vanish in a single, dreadful stroke. In exploring these ominous omens and terrifying secrets, one can glean parallels to universal human tendencies. Hubris invites downfall. Forbidden powers, whether real or rumored, lure leaders into catastrophic missteps. Astral phenomena can trigger mass fear, crippling unity, and inviting opportunistic invasions. Beneath it all, we see a timeless longing to interpret bizarre occurrences through mythic frames, weaving monsters or curses into the narrative. A rational mind might see these as illusions covering simpler triggers such as famine, plague, or war. But the depth of supernatural references in so many vanished civilizations begs the question: is there more to these midnight collapses than meets the eye? Many travelers continue to roam the earth, seeking these hidden corners of antiquity. A collapsed fortress here, a desert city partially excavated there, a labyrinth inside a ruined temple rumored to contain the final inscriptions of a doomed empire. Some come away spooked by the eerie hush in such places, reporting odd echoes, half-lost chanting, or sudden chills unrelated to temperature. Skeptics chalk that up to psychological suggestion. Yet, rummaging through personal accounts, diaries, or small research papers not widely publicized, we find persistent mention of intangible dread that rises at twilight in these lost capitals. Is it all folklore's power to shape perception, or a residual effect from phenomena not yet captured by instruments? Finally, the question remains: are these monstrous or cosmic events that ended ancient empires truly possible, or just cautionary tales turned into legends? The probable answer lies somewhere between literal and symbolic. Certain real catastrophes, like volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, or unstoppable pandemics, could easily produce the horrifying visuals that became monstrous shapes in the post-event legends. A monstrous winged demon might well be the depiction of a pyroclastic flow or a blackening sky. A serpent from the heavens might describe a large meteor trail. A devouring hush might represent a rapid plague that silenced entire city blocks overnight. In each scenario, it's not surprising that the survivors attributed an air of the supernatural. Yet, the uniform emphasis on midnight rituals and curses might also indicate that, at times, a genuine attempt at harnessing or battling intangible forces took place, and that the ancients, some of them more advanced in spiritual or arcane knowledge than we might suspect, dabbled in powers that eventually consumed them. Thus, when empires crumbled at midnight, ominous omens and terrifying secrets buried by ancient civilizations stands as both a chronicle of awe-inspiring cautionary episodes and a reflection on humankind's eternal vulnerability to the unknown. The broken pillars, eerie glyphs, and scattered relics speak in a language older than any living tongue, warning us that ambition, if wedded to arrogance, can attract dire consequences. The final hush that fell over each doomed capital lingers as a spectral echo, woven into local myth and half-lost manuscripts, waiting for a future explorer or scholar to piece together partial truths. Meanwhile, the planet's great deserts, jungles, and mountain valleys cradle these ruins in stillness. At dusk, the wind soughs through the crumbled arches, whispering half-formed melodies of old. If one stands in a deserted courtyard where an empire once thrived, that hush can almost be felt physically, a tension that suggests the monstrous or cosmic terror might not be gone at all, merely dormant, like a beast coiled under the dust, waiting for the next civilization daring enough to awaken it. And though we, in our modern age, claim advanced science and rational skepticism, the possibility remains that we too might face some intangible doom if we blindly conjure powers or ignore cryptic warnings. History has shown that midnight can arrive suddenly, bringing with it ominous omens and an unstoppable meltdown. Let these tales be a gentle reminder that the line separating our proud societies from the fate of those lost empires is thinner than we dare admit.